Everyone, and welcome to ProWritingAid 101 for Business Writers. I'm Micah McGuire, ProWritingAid's B2B Digital Marketing Manager, and today I'm here with Tom Wilde, our Head of Client Solutions. It is great to see everyone here. I think we have folks from all over, so thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us today. Now, without further ado, let's jump into today's agenda. First, we are going to be diving into some of the most important reports for business writers, and this includes our summary and goals reports, our readability report, our style report, and our sticky sentences report. From there, we're going to hop over to the Chrome extension just to show you what our real-time checker looks like when you might be using it in the Chrome browser for, say, your Gmail, emails, things like that. And then we're also going to pop over to a couple of really useful tools for business writers that are kind of outside of our reports, but are still super helpful. We do also want today to kind of be driven by what you guys would like to know. So we're going to be reserving the last 5 or 10 minutes of today's session for Q&A. So if at any time during the session you have questions, please pop them into the Q&A box. We'll try to get to as many as we can. And if by any chance we didn't get the chance to answer your question, please feel free to send it in to hello@prowritingaid.com. Again, that is hello, H-E-L-L-O, at prowritingaid.com. Just throw in the subject line that you were at our Business 101, and Tom and I will make sure to get back to you as soon as we can. All righty, well, Tom, I think we should get started.
Great, thanks, Micah. Hi, everybody. Great to see you here today. Let me just share my screen. As Micah said, we're going to be taking you through the web editor, showing you some of the reports you can run, and then we'll take a look at one or two of the other integrations and some of the other features we've got within ProWritingAid 2. We'll keep it fairly fast paced, but if you have questions, do use the Q&A or the chat box to post those, and we'll get to those as well. All right, let's get started. So I've shared my screen. Here's the ProWritingAid web editor. So this sits on our website, and as you can see, it's got a range of reports, buttons across the top in the ribbon there. What I want to point out very first of all is this settings button, because that allows you to set your writing style. So select the style of writing you're using. You can even set your document type here as well. And I'll come on to show you how that can be important or why that's important in a minute. And really importantly, your language. So what's the version of English that you're using in your organization, or maybe that your client expects? So you can set general English, British, UK, US, Australian or Canadian English. Now, back into the reports. The first place to start with any document is a real-time checker. The real-time checker is like the kind of the editor on your shoulder. It's constantly looking for improvements and corrections in your writing. So yes, mistakes, but also areas that it can improve your writing to make it more readable to the benefit of your reader. So what you can see, I've turned on the real-time checker and it's already counted to 35. So that means it's found 35 possible improvements in the document. As I continue to write, it will continue looking for further improvements. Each of those errors or improvements relates to one of these underlined words, and you can see they're color coded, so blue, yellow, red, and purple. You can filter those. So you'll see in this left-hand sidebar here, we've got a filter under the grammar and style portion. You can filter grammar, style, spelling, or passive voice issues. So you can highlight just one of those. And the important thing is here, there are two elements to your sidebar. You've got a grammar and style checker here, which is looking for all the key improvements. And you can navigate down through this one at a time. Click on one. It'll highlight the point in the actual document and give you the information. Now you can actually make the change in the sidebar. So you can navigate through the sidebar, or you can just do it through the document itself. Just hover over that highlight. The information will pop up and you can make the change and make the changes through the document from top to bottom. It really depends on how you prefer to work. I prefer to work through the document. So I do most of my editing here as opposed to in the sidebar. Let me just show you. Yeah, sorry, Mike.
To correct, right?
Say again?
In either case, it's just a click to correct.
Exactly. So I was just going to show you now, before we go on to the other part of the sidebar, the goals part, which is really exciting. But let me just show you how you actually make an edit, right? So hover over the underlined word. The message will appear. That's going to tell you what the the change is, what the recommended change is. What is it that is incorrect about that word or that phrase, and what should it be? So here it spotted a typo. You've misspelt believe. It gives you the correct version here. Now I can just click on this if I want to add it to my dictionary, because actually that's a specific word I'm using. If I want to ignore that, I can. In this instance, obviously, I'm going to make that change. And I'm going to click here on this little arrow, which will automatically take me to my next edit. Okay, so it's made the change, highlighted the next edit, and there we found a missing determiner. I'm not sure what a determiner is. So let's click on the information icon. That's a really important feature of ProWritingAid. Okay, it's the contextual learning that's built into the tool. So you learn while you're writing. Okay, it's learning in the flow of work, if you like. So it explains more about determiners. It links to a full article. And with some of these information articles, it will embed and include a short video on a particular point or a quiz, all the time trying to help you learn and reinforce that learning. So you're building skills and capabilities as you go along. Let's shut that down, make the change, and move on to the next one. Okay, so I can, again, this is a readability point. It's underlined in yellow. This is a style point usually. So it's not saying I'm wrong, but I could improve the sentence just by removing the words all of. They're unnecessary here. So I'm going to make that change and move on. And as you see, as I work down through the document, making these changes, it improves the quality of the document. It's getting better, which means my reader's going to be grateful or more grateful, and they're going to find it easy to understand what I'm saying. They're more likely to agree with what I'm saying, and it's going to do my reputation as a writer no end of good.
And if you're actually looking to see how it's improving, you can take a look at the goals sidebar, and it will also show you all of those markers kind of moving up the chain. Tom, should we discuss kind of how changing your document type affects your goals?
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, absolutely. So the goals are a range of metrics that show you exactly like Micah said. They show you your scores, show your how you're performing in certain areas related to that particular document type. So here I've got a general setting. It's measuring my grammar, spelling, and style. It's measuring my sentence length, my readability grade. I can see whether I'm on target or whether I'm not hitting the target. So here you can see readability grade. Here's my target area, this bubble. My target area is readability grade of up to 10. I'm just on the upper edge. So that's where the green line is. Anything in green is good. Anything in yellow or gold, it needs some improvement, okay? So my sentence length here is out of the zone. I should be aiming for sentence length between 11 and 18 words. And actually, I'm hitting 20 words per sentence, which is too long. Now, as Micah said, this not only changes as I make the edits, so as I make the edits, as I improve my documents, those scores will realign and show where I'm making the improvements. So there's a really quick way to monitor the quality and the improvements of my writing. But if I change my document type, and there's a long list of document types here, it actually changes some of the metrics. So let's have a look at an email sales setting. So this is where I'm sending a sales email. So some of the things I want to measure in the writing of that are a little bit different. For example, positivity. Am I being positive in my email? How many questions do I include in my email? Am I asking questions? Okay, so a good sales email should pose some questions to the reader. What's my spam phrase count? So that's going to give you a good indication of whether your email is going to be caught by spam filters or not. So these are really useful metrics specifically for email writing. And as you saw, yeah, Micah.
If we took a look at general, could we show kind of like the ways that the goals tend to change? Because, you know, for a general email versus a sales email, you know, I think we have some different targets on just general emails as far as having those spam counts and things like that. Because of course, if you're sending this out through a email service provider like MailChimp, the spam phrases are going to be important. If you were just say sending over a general email to a colleague, probably wouldn't be quite as worried about the spam filter, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we move to a general email, we'll have a look here. So you can see the range of metrics there. In fact, within a general email, we don't look at its spam filter because it's not a marketing, it's not a sales email. So we're not looking at the same criteria. And as I said, they will vary from each one, from metric to metric.
So
Okay,
it
so
really
that's,
comes down to matching to your document, ultimately, to get the most out of the goals sidebar.
yeah, exactly that, exactly. And this is a really new feature for us. So goals is brand new. It's been out about a month. I think we demoed it for the first time in last month's 101.
Mhm.
It's not yet featuring in all of our integrations, as you'll see later when we show you the Chrome extension, but it will be coming to those very shortly. Okay, let's move into some of the other reports, because that's where the real power lies. The real-time check is great for in the flow of work editing, the editor on my shoulder kind of. But what I want to do now is understand, where can I make the deep improvements in my writing? And to do that, we've got to go deeper into the document. And the place to start is a summary report. Now, a quick word before we launch that, because there is a large number of reports here. I think there are 19 reports you could run. And if you were to run every report with every document you ran, you would be spending a lot longer writing anything. That's not what we recommend. The idea here is that you're using ProWritingAid to understand where your biggest weaknesses are, the biggest areas of improvements you could make. And once you've figured that out, you know which reports are most valuable to you, you start building that into your writing habits. So what we generally see are users that are using 3, 4, maybe 5 reports with every document they write, depending on the document type. They know which reports are most useful and most valuable to them. How do they do that? Well, they can use goals, but if they run the summary report, it goes even deeper on some of these things. Let's have a look at that. Okay, so we've got 3 headline scores. These always appear with the summary report: grammar, style, and spelling. They are the most important things in any document. You can see this document is way off target. So my grammar score is only 38%. It should be 100%. Style 32, spelling 65. The next bunch of goals, the scores, these are where my document is looking good. It's looking great, in fact. Okay, so these is bunched together all of the metrics where I'm doing well. Passive voice is good. My readability grade is good. I don't have any very long sentences. And then below that, we get into the areas where I need to do most work. Now, we know grammar, spelling, and style are in there. We've all got also got sentence length, positivity, and glue index. Now, I can run any of these reports by finding the corresponding report in the ribbon. But before I do that, there is a lot more information in the summary report. So if I scroll down or just click on any of these metrics, it'll take me to a little bit more information within the summary report. And that's quite useful because there's lots of visual aids here that really build the picture of your document. So here, this is the readability report. Now, although I'm on target, I can see very quickly from this graph that actually I've got 1 or 2 very difficult to read paragraphs in this document. So I probably want to go into there and just tidy that up a bit, just improve the readability even further. And you can go down through each of the relevant areas in the summary report to do that. Once you've got an idea of which areas you need to focus on, you just run the corresponding report. So I mentioned readability. Here's the readability report. We run that. It breaks the document down paragraph by paragraph. It gives me some key metrics about readability. So I've got my FleshReadingAid score. I've got my FleshKincaid grade, which are the 2 we tend to focus on most at ProWritingAid. There's a couple of others there. There are loads of readability metrics out there. You're probably all using different ones. You can find the core ones here. Micah.
How is FleshReadingAid and the FleshKincaid kind of scored? How does that kind of come about?
Yeah, it's a good question. So FleshKincaid's or FleshReadingAid score, it looks at the complexity of your sentences. So it's looking at the average number of words per sentence and also the average number of syllables per word. So if you've got a score that you need to improve, and I can see here, I've got a very difficult to read paragraph. If I click on the arrow here, it'll take me to that paragraph. Gives me a FleshReadingAid score of 42.1. Now, we would normally aim for a ReadingAid score of between around 60 or 70, okay, of ProWritingAid. So this is below the score. To improve that, what I need to do is one of a few things. I could split that paragraph into 2 shorter paragraphs. Best thing is probably to look at the long sentences and divide those sentences into shorter sentences, and then look at the vocabulary. Am I using long, complicated words, possibly unnecessarily? So can I use simpler, shorter versions? Those are the kind of things you need to focus on, and you need to do that yourself. Okay, so the AI in ProWritingAid, it can't rewrite a paragraph for you, or not accurately enough for you to, to just drop it into your document. So what you need to do is just look at the paragraph, rewrite it or edit it, and then run the report again.
One of the things you might keep in mind is that you're essentially writing for a middle schooler. So that Flesch-Kincaid grade actually refers to a grade school level of reading. And basically, we're not saying that your intended audience is a bunch of middle schoolers, but in the analysis of good writing, it's been discovered that easy to read writing is generally going to be between a 6th and a 10th grade of reading level. So essentially, if you have a paragraph that a middle schooler or an early high schooler could read very easily, you're in good shape. So that's kind of one of the things to keep in mind when you're trying to rewrite these paragraphs is, can I explain it the way I might explain it to a middle schooler? So not quite explain it to me like I'm 5, but the simpler you can get, the easier it's going to be on your reader.
Yeah, that's a really great explanation. You can get really tied up in knots if I'm trying to define readability and how to improve it, but that kind of sums it up perfectly. Okay, so that's the readability report, and it's one that I use an awful lot. It's a really quick win just to highlight, okay, these are the paragraphs where your reader is probably going to struggle the most. Let's take a look at the style report next. Style is really key. It's a really rich report. It looks at lots of different things. We'll run through a few of them right now. So you can see there are lots of highlights within the document. Now I can just work my way again down through those individual highlights in the document itself, or I can work down through the categories of highlights here. So I can see all of my readability enhancements here. And if I were to click on any of them, it'll take me to the right place in the document. So here you can see it's highlighted the phrase started doing. Actually, just use done. Okay, it's a quicker, simpler way of saying the same thing. So I'll, again, make that change, move on through the document. One thing I didn't highlight earlier is that within the highlights, you can disable and you can ignore rules. Okay, now just a word on that. Disable is a permanent disable. So if you disable a rule, it's going to apply to every document you then run through ProWritingAid. If you ignore, it's a one-time only ignore. So it will continue to check for it later through the document and in future documents too. I will shortly be releasing a version of ProWritingAid that remembers your ignores. But just a word on that so that you know the difference between disable and ignore. Okay, so we've looked at 1 or 2 readability enhancements. Let's just shoot that one as well. Okay, so quite is unnecessary. We can move on from that. Let's look at some passive verbs as passive voice examples here. So it's found 3 examples of the passive voice, okay, which is the Achilles heel of many business writers we find. People love to use the passive voice and often unnecessarily. Okay, the passive voice is where in the sentence you reposition the object and the subject, so the object comes before the verb, whereas what we're usually used to reading and expect to read is subject, verb, object. So in a passive verb, if a passive sentence, we see object, verb, and often the subject is missing. Here, now, sorry, just to say what's wrong with that is you're giving the reader extra work. Okay, you're often hiding the important information. We tend to use it because we don't like to say who's responsible for something. We like to leave that unmentioned. So there is a time and a place where the passive voice might be appropriate, but we tend to think of the passive voice, or we make the mistake of thinking the passive voice makes it sound more formal or more important. Try to get away from that idea and use the active voice where you can.
And Tom, you make a good point with the passive voice occasionally having a place within this style report. Isn't this something that our users should be kind of thinking of as suggestions, not absolutes? Because I think we have a tendency to get into this mindset with, say, the grammar and spelling checker, that we're used to those being true errors. We know, hey, I definitely need to add a comma here or it's incorrect, or I need to spell this word this way or it's incorrect. But I think whenever we jump to the style guide, users might kind of look at it and go, well, is that technically incorrect? So how do they need to be thinking when they're applying this report?
Yeah, and it's a good point, Micah, and it comes back to, to to the subject of writing, right? There are many subjective areas of writing. Many come down to whether something is right or wrong comes down to how you're trying to communicate and who you're trying to communicate to. So it can be difficult, and it can be a question of nuance. What grammatical constructions you're using, and so on and so forth. So yeah, we try and look at it from the point of view as, how are you going to make your document as readable as possible? How do you reduce the barriers or the friction you're putting in the way of your reader? So yeah, it comes down to stylistic differences in many cases. Okay, so the passive voice. So you can see here it's identified this sentence: a number of meetings have been held. Okay, so like I said, the subject is missing. We don't know who held the meetings, and that's usually unnecessary. If we actually were to change that to the active voice, so either I have held a number of meetings, we have held a number of meetings, they have held a number of meetings, or it has held a number of meetings, it will make the information simpler to understand for the reader's perspective. Okay, so we'll make that change. But before that, remember I mentioned about the information, the contextual information? Here we go. We've got a video embedded here. I think it features Jackie Chan and explains the differences between the passive and the active voice. So it's a great way of learning those grammar points as you go. Okay, we're going to make the change and move on. There are other style improvements in the document too. We can have a look at a few of those here. This is a great way of checking your business jargon. So we've got things like cutting edge, bandwidth. We navigate to any of those. Just replace that business jargon. Stop saying bandwidth, just say capacity or spare capacity. Again, it's putting fewer barriers in the way. We don't like to see too much business jargon. It's not the biggest of problems, but it contributes to making documents harder to read.
And you might say it's kind of one of our 7 deadly business sins. That and passive voice are probably 2 of the most common business writing difficulties that we see.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to give you an example now of a sentence where we've got multiple edits, because what actually happens with ProWritingAid is, as you make changes, it continues to look for improvements in the changes you're making, if you see what I mean. So here we can see it's picked up in this sentence that thus far is unnecessary. So we'll make the change and remove that. So now we've got a shorter sentence. We've got other changes we can make. The majority of should be changed to most. Most, if we then remove that, we'll probably get another edit in a second. Is it going to rerun? Let's just rerun that report, see what it comes up with now. There we go. So now it's identified that there's a passive construction there as well. So we can change that. Most have accepted the proposition. So 3 or 4 edits into that sentence, we're ending up with a much shorter, much simpler to read sentence. So it's looking at multiple things within every single sentence and phrase and paragraph that you're writing. Okay, so I think that's everything from this style report. We were going to have a look at, I think, sticky sentences next, because this is one of my favorites. So sticky sentences. Sticky sentences looks at the number of glue words you have in a sentence, hence the term sticky. So if you have a lot of glue words in a sentence, the sentence becomes sticky, it becomes harder to read. We define a limit of around about 40%. So if more than 40% of the words in a sentence are glue words, the sentence is sticky. What are glue words? So glue words are the 200 most commonly used words in the English language. They're prepositions, they're the articles. They're the words that just glue the working words together. Let me give you an example. So here we've got a sentence that's been identified as sticky. Just wanted to circle back about the project we talked about around the last month or so. Lots of improvements we can make in that sentence. But here you can see the glue words. Just wanted to back about the around last or so. Those glue words on their own don't give me any meaning or any context of the sentence. It's the working words there that tell me what the sentence is trying to communicate. So if I can reduce the number of glue words, I'm doing more work with less, if you see what I mean. So I'm making the transfer of information from the page to my reader's brain simpler. How do I do that? Sorry, Mikey, did that say?
I just wanted to add that essentially, if you've ever read a sentence that doesn't really seem to say anything, chances are you've run into a sticky sentence. I think our founder, Chris Banks, likes to call glue words kind of the cholesterol of writing. So whereas your working words are more like the meat of your writing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. When you find yourself struggling with a sentence, you take a step back and look at it, you realize generally it's because the sentence is full of glue words. Okay, so with this sentence, I might simply just edit it down to something like just wanted to circle back. Do I need the rest of the information? That tells the reader everything they needed to know. If I wanted to have a bit more, wanted to circle back about the project. Okay, so there's a lot more that the words in that sentence are doing. And it's reducing the word count, it's reducing the work the reader has to do. Now, in ProWritingAid, we look at both sticky sentences, you can see it's found sticky sentences, but also what we call semi-sticky sentences. So they've got a lower proportion of glue words, but they're still worth focusing on. And again, you can see from the examples here that plenty of words within that sentence you could take out to make the sentence work harder for you, reduce that cholesterol.
And I think it's also worth noting that there's no one correct way to rewrite these sentences. Again, it does go back to the subjective nature of writing. One writer is probably not going to rewrite a sticky sentence the same way another might. So just keep in mind that it's not necessarily a right way of doing it. It's just look at your metrics and see, okay, have I managed to improve that sticky sentence? Because even in a case that, let's say you take a totally sticky sentence down to a semi-sticky sentence, that's still an improvement in your writing.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is writing is a craft. Being able to write well is a craft, and it takes time and it takes practice. Now, with the use of the goals and the summary report, we turn that craft into a bit more of a science at ProWritingAid. We break it down for you so that you can work on the constituent subject areas and improve your skills. But it does take work, and this is not intended to replace the human editor. This is not intended to, allow you to kick back and put your feet up and just expect ProWritingAid to do all the work. It still needs you to look over it, but it allows you to focus on the important bits. So while ProWritingAid is taking care of, the grammar, the patterns, the great things that computers are good at spotting, it leaves you to focus on the argument, okay, the positioning, the context of what you're trying to say. But like Micah says, with lots of this, there's no single right way or wrong way. It takes practice. Okay, just wanted to, at this point, just to show you what ProWritingAid looks like in some of our other integrations. We've given you a kind of heads up on 3 of those reports. So on those, my advice would be get into ProWritingAid and practice using some of those reports. Find the ones that are relevant to you. If you're a business writer, there are some that you're not going to be needed. Homonym reports, pronoun reports, possibly not necessary, diction reports, but others are really, really useful. Let's just have a look at what it looks like in the Chrome extension, because I think that's our most popular integration. So I use Gmail, okay, and I use Gmail in Chrome. And you can see up here that I've got the ProWritingAid Chrome extension installed. And it's all turned on. I've got my settings here. And in the document, it's doing exactly the same as you saw in the real-time checker. We've got red, yellow, blue highlights. There'll be some purple in there as well, some passive voice. And I can just work my way down through the document, hovering over each one, same as you saw in the real-time checker. If I want to go into the deeper reports, okay, so if I want to go into the full interface, just click down here on this target icon, and it will open the same UI that you saw in the web editor. Just give it a second or two, and it will. There we go. It looks very familiar, right? You see the same reports. I can run all the reports from here once again. It's got everything there. One thing I
And
didn't mention, sorry, Micah, go for it.
just very soon, we'll also have goals in the Chrome extension as well. So that will be carrying over to our integrations. It should just be a couple of more weeks before we roll that out, though.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I forgot to mention in the web editor is the Word Explorer. It's a really powerful resource baked into ProWritingAid. So you can see I can highlight in any of the integrations, doesn't matter where I am, I can double click on any word and it opens the Word Explorer. And that's going to give me synonyms for the word I've clicked on, but much more than that too. If I actually click on the Word Explorer, it takes me through to a full dictionary. It lists spellings, rhyming words, collocations. I can look at adjectives that I'd use before everyone, adverbs I'd use after everyone. So if you're looking for a resource that's going to help you build your skills and capability, some of these elements are really going to help with that.
And the
Okay.
reverse dictionary and collocations are probably the most useful for our business writers. The reverse dictionary is great. If you've ever had a word on the tip of your tongue that you can't remember the word itself, but you can remember what the definition is, that's a great place to use your reverse dictionary. If you have a word that commonly occurs together, so let's say there's a verb that you can't remember that has to do with, say, ropes, something like that, then you can take a look at the co-location dictionary, and that will give you a breakdown of some of the most common verbs. So let's say you were trying to look at, a rope snapping or something like that, but you couldn't remember that second verb. Then you would be able to go into co-locations and take a look at that. So those are generally very helpful if you have those kind of tip of my tongue moments.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Micah. Okay, I think just before we move on to some of the other features, just wanted to show you as well the Word add-in. We have an add-in for Microsoft Office that works in both Word and Outlook. And again, you can see here, I've got it installed on my ribbon, on my tab bar, sorry. And if I open the ProWritingAid tab, it's exactly the same UI. Same reports, same sidebar. You can see I've got goals here as well as the grammar and start. The only difference is it's on the right-hand side rather than the left-hand side. Same highlights in the document itself. So we try and make it so that you've got the same look and feel wherever you're working, wherever you're writing. It's as simple as that. Okay, let's go back into the web editor. And I just want to take you through two elements now, because I think they're really useful for business writers. One is our style guide tool. Okay, style guides, you're probably all familiar with a style guide. So if you work for an organization, many organizations have a style guide. It defines the tone of voice you should be using and some of the more subjective areas of writing. ProWritingAid allows you to automate that style guide. So no longer do you have to go and find where the style guide is on your intranet or in someone's drawer. Refer and cross-reference your document to the style guide rules and then edit the document. You can actually create the rules in the ProWritingAid user interface and let the tool do the work for you. Let me show you an example. So these are my personal style guide rules. They're created for the documents I work in. If I'm part of a ProWritingAid team, so if I've got a team license, you can also create team rules that will apply to anybody who is listed under that team. Rules can be as simple or as complex as you can imagine. And I'm going to show you a fairly simple example. So here's a rule that we created for Pennsylvania University. Pennsylvania University wanted to stop people, both in students and academics, faculty staff, using the term Pennsylvania University when the actual term is University of Pennsylvania. So they created a really simple rule. There are 4 steps to creating that rule. You create the wrong sentence. So an example of a wrong sentence here, simply she graduated from Pennsylvania University. Then we create the match. So what is it you want the computer to actually find that's incorrect, either a word or a phrase? Here it's Pennsylvania University. And what do you want to replace that match with? So the replacement is University of Pennsylvania. And then we add a message. So what is the message you want to appear for the user when they find or they use the wrong term in the sentence? And here it's simply never use Pennsylvania University. Our brand name is University of Pennsylvania. Now you can test the rule before you deploy it. Okay, the rule tests okay. We can save the rule and then we can go and run the rule in a sample document. Let's do that right now. So I'm just going to, just for speed, add it there, turn the real-time checker on, and there we have the rule that we just created. Never use Pennsylvania University. Our brand name is University of Pennsylvania, and I can make the switch. Now, this can get really, yeah, sorry, Micah, go for it.
It can get very, very complex, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We use parts of speech tagging within our rule generator to be able to define certain parts of speech. So whether you're defining a particular position, if you, for instance, you have a word that you want it identified whether it's being used as a verb or a noun, and you can differentiate between the two, then you can use parts of speech tags to define that. And I think we've got a couple of blog articles, Mike, that you're going to be linking to and sending out shortly so that people can see how to create their own rules. You can see some of the rules we've created here. So here's some examples of parts of speech tags we've used to create a rule for the Oxford comma. So we've got a missing Oxford comma in this sentence. We define the rule by specifying singular or plural noun or verb followed by another singular plural noun or verb. This is getting quite complex, but bear with me. Basically, I'm defining the rule here by specifying that this will be a noun or a verb followed by a comma, another noun or verb followed by a coordinating conjunction, a possible determiner, and then another noun or verb. The important thing is there is a missing comma. So here we use tokens to replace the whole string of words, but we add this extra comma just here, and that's the Oxford comma. So as you can see, it can get quite complex. We also use regular expression. And if you've got a project where you want to actually convert a style guide, we often work with customers or clients to do that with you. Okay, I just wanted to give you a quick snapshot of that, but I think it's everything we wanted to just cover in this session. Okay, moving on, snippets. Let me show you a bit about snippets. So snippets, let me just open it here. Snippets is our text expander tool. It allows you to create pre-formatted or pre-written chunks of text. That could be a word, a paragraph, a whole, multiple paragraphs, or just a phrase. We use it a lot in our support team, for example. So we have lots of pre-prepared snippets. So an example of one I might use for customers who are entering a trial, I have a snippet here, which just welcomes them to ProWritingAid and explains how they'll find their license, how they'll find some user guides. And I create a shortcut for this snippet here, which means that when I'm in the document, if I type backslash and start typing the shortcut, it'll look for that snippet. I can click on it and drop it straight into the document. So you can imagine if I've got this enabled through the Chrome extension and I'm sending lots of emails, it can be a real time saver for anyone who's using repetitive text, chunks of text, policy documents, anything like that.
And those snippets are rich text, correct? So formatting, links, all of that good stuff tend to stay in whenever you're using them, right?
Exactly that. Yeah, that's exactly right. I think that was pretty much most of the functions we wanted to cover today. Micah, have I missed anything?
No, I think we have got everything covered. I think we can go ahead and move on to some of the questions that have popped up. We have got some great ones about our integrations and about Word. One of them being that whenever you set your settings as far as, say, your language and your document type on the web editor, does this also set, say, your desktop app and your Word plugin as well?
Yeah, absolutely it does. So the web editor is kind of like your central control panel, as it were. Okay, so changes you make here in your settings will then apply to any version of ProWritingAid you open up. So yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And I think as we saw, goals are available now on the Word plugin. The Chrome extension will be following shortly. And then also, great question about integrations and our Word Explorer. Is that Word Explorer available in the Chrome plugin and the Word plugin as well?
Yeah, it absolutely is. So if we look at the Chrome extension here, I can double click and it's doing exactly the same thing here. So yeah, you can access the Word Explorer in any of the integrations.
And I'm sure if you wanted to explore the larger Explorer, take a look at the reverse dictionary, things like that, that would pop up in your primary editor within the Chrome extension, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So I think we had another one talking about if you are in a highly technical field that has a lot of terms that may be flagged as, say, spelling errors, things like that. So let's say we have someone who's a chemical company, something in that vein, to where they're dealing with a lot of chemical names and things like that that may not be recognized by your average dictionary. Is there anything a team can do to kind of work around that with ProWritingAid, and except for, say, disabling it for each word?
Yeah, absolutely is, Micah. And that's a really good question. Actually, it's been something I've been working on today with a couple of my colleagues. So we have, within ProWritingAid, we have a term-based function that is really useful for this. It allows you to upload a terminology base so that you can set kind of preferred spellings for particular words. You can also set deprecated words or phrases. So maybe if you're working, chemical company is a good example. Even it's something like a retail organization, maybe you've got a brand or product names that are deprecating, you've got new versions, you can enter those via the term base, and it will then highlight any deprecated terms that are in the documents and suggest the correct version. If it's a preferred term, it just means you're adding it so that it's no longer identified as a spelling mistake or a possible typo. Let me just show you. So
Yeah,
here's the term base.
I think
Sorry.
we've got time to kind of go over a little bit about how you add things. And, I think maybe we need to discuss also mass additions as well. I mean, because I know some of these companies can often have, 1,000, 2,000, sometimes even up to 10,000 different terms that they need handled. So it might be worth it
Yeah,
to show how it works for those kinds of additions.
yeah, absolutely. In fact, so we had an organization recently that uploaded 130,000 terms. So we're used to working with large term bases, and it's a great way for setting acronyms, acceptable use acronyms as well. So let me show you. So here we have the term base. So I'm in ProWritingAid. I go to this left-hand menu and down to term base here. That'll take me through, and let me just take you to my term base, which is here. You can see again, I've got a personal term base. I've also got a PWA team term base. Now, most term bases are, you're treating it like a team dictionary. So it's going to be the team that is where you want to upload it. Download a template. So we have a really simple template here. I can show you what it looks like. In fact, I can do the download here. And all the template asks you to complete, there are 4 main fields. So you've got the term, the deprecated term, the definition, and the URL. Now, all of these are optional other than column A, which is your term. So that's where you need to list the actual term, and that's going to be the accepted term. So if it's a particular word or a phrase, doesn't matter if it's multiple words, it means it will be recognized as an acceptable term. If you have got a deprecated term, so an old version of that term, you can add it too, so it'll be highlighted. Once you've completed your term base, so that's just a CSV file, you can then upload that through the import button. It'll be listed here. If you want to update it, you just update the CSV file and re-import it, and then it will work as part of the ProWritingAid, the core toolkit. It'll highlight words, or it'll accept words that are in the document itself. So it's kind of a seamless function, if you see what I mean.
So what you'll find is within the term base, we've essentially got 2 functions that if you just add only the term that needs to be recognized, that just means that ProWritingAid will go, oh, hey, this is a word that I don't need to flag as a spelling error. But then if you have say, a deprecated term or a deprecated acronym, you would add both the new acronym and the deprecated acronym. And in that case, if the deprecated acronym is used, ProWritingAid will actually flag that as incorrect and suggest usage of the new acronym instead. So the term base does kind of have a couple of different functions to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, you can also add acronyms as well. So they're recognized and it will identify whether there's an acronym report. So going back into the actual core editor, there's an acronym report here, which will then report on whether you're doing things like introducing an acronym the first time you use it. If you have already introduced it, then it'll recognize the full spelling the next time and suggest you just use the acronym. So it ties in really nicely with the acronym checker as well.
Well, Tom, it looks like we are about coming up on time to go ahead and get everything wrapped up. Everyone, I am going to be tossing a few links into the chat before we get everything wrapped up. These first two links you're going to see are going to be guides to our style guide rules. So it will help you learn how to create, first of all, some simple style guide rules. You'll see our style guide 101 at the top there, and then some more advanced style guide rules that kind of goes into those parts of speech, things like that. We also have a guide to our snippets that I am posting now. You need to find out more about using the snippets tool. And finally, if you are joining us and you have not signed up for a license or our newsletter, there are links there. And then also, if you are interested in getting a demo of our ProWritingAid for teams, you're interested in using it for groups of, let's say 3 or more people, then come take a look at signing up for a demo with us. We can go through the tool in more depth, find out if it's going to be a good fit for your company, and just dig into anything that you might need as far as special considerations like, say, on-premise deployments, that kind of thing. And we can discuss that in a demo if you're interested. So all of those links are in the chat. And again, if anybody has any questions or comments, please email us at hello@prowritingaid.com. We will be checking that inbox regularly, so Tom and I will get back to you. Just put in the subject line, you were a member of our Business 101. So thank you everyone for attending. It was great having you all on, and have a fantastic week.